So we have Ken Chrisman, President of Beverages from Graham Packaging. Welcome, Ken. Well, you've just heard some of these technologies which are the trendsetters in intelligent packaging, and Graham Packaging is clearly, one of the key innovators when we talk about packaging solutions. From your organization, what would you say is a great success story for intelligent packaging that is also driving consumer experience?
Well, Didi, it's great to be here. And there's a couple of things that we're doing. It's interesting, right? When you talk about intelligent packaging, we tend to think a lot about digital in all of this. And there's some great components here. But the first thing I want to talk about is something that's a little bit simpler. It's a product that we've developed that is essentially using rPET, which is recycled PET, to make an aluminum can, but an alternative to an aluminum can. The really cool thing about this design, and you think about this from a practical consumer perspective, is that it can be produced from 100% post-consumer recycled PET. But what's kind of cool about this is that we have tops for this that you can just take the entire top off this can, drink out of this PET can, and then reuse the can. Now, you can't do that with aluminum, it's a sharp edge. And so being creative and having the design actually speak to the intelligence behind how you would use it and how you would allow it to be reused, and how you can actually create new streams for PET, because aluminum is quite finite. I mean, I know there's a lot of recycling in aluminum, but PET is now also considered to be highly recyclable because of all the things we've done with bottles. We're just excited about the ability to have a visual, something that strikes the consumer, is visually interesting, but also communicates a different value proposition. In this case, more sustainable, more user-friendly, and frankly, a reusable perspective. And so this is a little bit, this is, I guess, more on the basic side of how do you design to catch the consumer's eye. The next slide talks to something that's really quite exciting for us when it comes to digital. This is digital watermarks. And what we're excited about here is that one of the challenges we have with recycling any material is going to be the commingling. We have shrink sleeves, not to say anything bad about shrink sleeves, but it's, when you go and collect these bottles, it's something that has to be dealt with. It's a different material in some cases. And so that commingling is a challenge. And so we're talking with a lot of brands about how do we do something different. So Ellen MacArthur Foundation sponsored, being supported by, by the European Brands Association. How do you put essentially a clear, almost an invisible watermark, digital watermark on these containers, so that if you took a smartphone and you passed it over, even if it was in the store, you can actually see, it's almost like, it's virtual reality. You can see what all the important consumer components are to this. And so it has a consumer component to it because you actually could tell what's going on, and frankly, even more than the people take time to read labels on in this case, on a bottle or a container. Beyond that, it's extraordinarily helpful when it comes to post-collection sorting. So when we go through a process, PET tends to be quite readily mechanically recycled, but the sorting processes in many of these operations is where we see some challenges. So the ability to be able to have to immediately scan an item and tell exactly what type of material it is. Now for PET, maybe some of us understand, most of us see it's clear, it's probably something like that. But for some of the more interesting, exotic, multi-layered materials, this digital watermark could be transformative because it would actually tell you exactly what that material composition is and then streamline it or divert it to the exact right part of the recycling process or the reprocessing process. So this is a nice way to think about digital consumer influence, but also thinking about what's the end of life to try to create a circularity when it comes to our materials.
Yeah, and what you really trigger me that, all these designs are conceptualized keeping in mind the end buyer, right? The buyer journey. So how will they perceive it? So it's all the customer experience is the main thing here. So thanks for sharing that example, Ken. And also recently, Graham Packaging has rebranded itself, right? Which is in a way reinforcing its brand promise towards packaging for the circular economy. So how are you making this sustainable as well?
So we're really focused on sustainability. We make bottles, we make containers, one of the world's leading bottle manufacturers, and bottles get a lot of attention. And they get a lot of attention because people use them because they're very convenient. They have a great consumer value. You can tell the quality of the item inside just because of how it was processed. But the end of life is a challenge. So circularity is fundamental for us. So we're looking at a couple of different technologies and innovations. How do we make our packaging intelligent? Well, one of the ways to make packaging intelligent is to have the design react to its, let's say in this case, its filling environment. When you take a hot fluid and you put it inside a bottle, it has an influence on the way that bottle reacts to that material. Now, generally, you have to have bottles that are pretty thick to be able to respond to having something, a hot fluid being, inserted. Most fluids are, like 185, 190 degrees Fahrenheit if it's a hot filled product. And so that puts a lot of pressure on the bottle to be able to, to hold up to that temperature, not deform. And so we have a brand new technology, this active-based technology that we're looking at. Self-activated means that it happens on its own. Mechanically activated happens in the process, with a mechanical intervention. In both circumstances, the real point here is that we can then operate at like 25% less material and still have that same, professional, robust bottle feel. We have a lot of brands that want to have that feel. The other part of this is that we can actually do up to 100% post-consumer resin. That is incredible in this space. To be able to have a bottle that is hot filled, but you can have that material be 100% recycled. That is a breakthrough. It's very important for where the entire industry is going. A lot of commitments made in the industries we serve with respect to 100% post-consumer. And this is one of the primary ways that our customers, our brand owners are going to be able to get to that. So that's one piece. Then the other piece is, how do you rethink some of the business models that we're working at? And we're on a great consortium with PepsiCo and Walmart, several others, and we're rethinking, the basics around the circularity. And so as a company, we think it's very important to be responsible and think, what's the end of life? How do we get that item back and put it back into the system? How do we create a truly circular path for the materials that we produce? One of the things we're looking at, of course, there's a lot of it happens to be around the collection space. Once you collect it, there's certain technologies and work that can be done to sort. And then, of course, reprocessing is relatively straightforward, but collecting is really a conundrum, especially in the United States. We're looking at some pretty clever, intelligent ways to collect bottles, including a subscriber program where consumers, there are a number of states, 40 states, in fact, that do not have bottle bills. They don't collect deposits when you buy a bottle, a product that has that uses a bottle, and you get that money back when you return it. Only 10 states do that. So these other 40 states, a number of them, believe it or not, do not have curbside recycling. And some of that's happened because China is no longer taking this material. And so it's really, changed the recycling dynamic. But then you have states like California and Washington who are now requiring a minimum amount of post-consumer. We're looking at this saying, well, it'd be great to be able to get a bag that's a barcode that people basically proactively sign up and say, I want to be in this program. And they're then held accountable to sort properly. Because the biggest challenge we have in recycling is receiving basically a pile of entirely commingled materials. The idea of being able to get it back pre-sorted from the consumer, somebody who's motivated to do this, and to be able to do that elegantly and to gamify it by using an app is very exciting. And those are the kind of different ways that we're partnering with our biggest partners, PepsiCo being one of our most important partners. How do we get consumers? How do we enable that circularity? How do we engage in parts of that circular stream where we're seeing some breakdowns, we're seeing some gaps? And so we're excited about the innovation, the intelligence in design and application that's being employed even in collecting and recovering and reprocessing our product at the end of their life.